¿Sí? Vale, pues vamos a empezar.
Ready? Let's begin then. Good morning, everyone. And please be welcome to the workshop. The first workshop this morning, as I mentioned earlier. It's a bit early, but we'll try to make it as fun as possible. So the aim of the workshop is to look at what offer Microsoft offers. We usually pay for Microsoft, but this time is giving us something free that we can use. So in this workshop we'll talk about what Microsoft gives us for free. Maybe you already know about it. Let's see. And the aim is to get to know different tools, both for development and IT. And which tools can we use from the development systems administrator point of view? So let's look at this. Who's a developer here in .NET?
Lo que vamos a ver aquí prácticamente es para C.NET. Si estás en Java, si quieres Java, te has equivocado de taller.
Well,
hay que tenerlo en cuenta. Esto es Microsoft al fin y al cabo, ¿no?
This workshop is Microsoft.
También, pues,
If you don't like it,
de sistemas,
you know, maybe you got the wrong workshop. So,
Linux,
do we have any systems administrators for Linux or Windows? If you are for Linux, this may be the wrong workshop for you. Although you might learn something. Otherwise, you woke up too early for the wrong workshop. Thank you very much. Okay, my name is Simon Roses. I work at Volnex. And I'll speak about Microsoft because I worked for them for many years. I worked in the security team for the headquarters, and I was traveling all around the world for them. I was also working from home for them for many years, and for them I checked vulnerabilities in products. We did different tasks, pen testing for Xbox and many other things. Other things I designed are not present already, but it's always good to know about them. And we have many security tools that we can use, and most of the ones I'll see are some that have been made public by Microsoft. We can start using them, and after this workshop you can go home and try these tools. And this is what I do. I worked at Volnex. If you follow Volnex, you pretty much know what we do. We travel a lot around the world, and Volnex is a startup with which we do many interesting things. And this afternoon I'll give a little speech on entrepreneurship regarding how we work abroad, because we work abroad a lot, and how we got to do a startup experience. And that's between 6 and 6:30, I think. So if this is not enough, make sure you come in the afternoon. Well, let's start with the interesting bit. What is Microsoft offering? We'll see a few tools regarding development and IT. The aim is to improve the security position of our organization and to increase security and make things more complex for attackers. And security and development-wise, as well as IT security-wise. Which things will we see? I apologize, we're not getting any sound.
A ver cómo salen, porque las vamos a hacer todas en directo, no he hecho ningún vídeo, o sea que bueno, ayer sacrifiqué unas cuantas cámaras con la confianza de que salgan todas las demos. Vamos a ver cómo salen, ¿no? Luego también lo único que me preocupa es el tema de las resoluciones, que como estoy utilizando...
Apologize, we're having a slight technical glitch that we're trying to sort out as soon as possible. We hope to be back shortly.
Una cosa bastante curiosa es que Microsoft hay bastante gente con Mac y
There are many people with Windows on Mac that works much better than on PC. Otherwise, just try it. And there are many people on Microsoft with Mac too.
la agenda de...
So here's today's agenda.
Vamos a hacer una pequeña introducción de qué
We'll have a short introduction
es el tema de seguridad. Vamos a ver
regarding security. We'll start with the IT tools, then we'll look at the other development tools, and then we'll have some conclusions to finish.
Voy a tener un pequeño problema, pero bueno, ya lo iré arreglando. Bueno. Esto para empezar aquí, ¿no?
So.
Como siempre, vamos a empezar.
Aquí está aquí saltando las diapositivas.
¿Esto cómo era?
Let's
No me acuerdo. Bueno, ya los miraremos a la hora que durante una demo.
look at this during a demo.
Programadores contra administradores contra los demás, ¿no?
But here we have the programmers versus the system admins versus the other animals. This is a typical organization where we have on the one hand the programmers, and I love this image. Here are the different profiles and how each of them sees themselves and how we see others. So here are the developers seen by developers. They're like scientists doing R&D, and how do they see designers? Well, designers are like kids with crayons. The project managers are not doing anything. The testing people are just breaking our software. Our machine was working, and when I give it to them, nothing works. And then we have the system administrators, and they ignore everything I ask for. And here we can see the different categories seen by the other categories. So we all fight with our neighbors. I love the administrators. Here we have Neo from Matrix. This is how they see themselves. They think they're superior beings, and this is how we all see each other. We have the programmers and designers, project managers, testing, and administrators. So it's quite funny and quite real regarding what happens and regarding how we see each other. I've been on different sites, in many different positions, and we're used to seeing all the different profiles. This is how administrators see the developers. You know, a bunch of stupid guys just smiling. And here we get an idea of the different profiles. And I guess that many of you, depending on your profile, you may say, well, this is how I see myself and this is how I see others. So this is quite real. But this is an error, anyhow. A very serious error that many organizations have.
El problema está de que estamos ahí combatiendo con la gente dentro de la organización.
The problem is that we are fighting with people inside the organization. Security-wise, we're not going anywhere this way. We think that my colleague is our enemy because he's stupid, and we just don't help. Our organization will never have a proper security. This is why we need to change that mindset. Security eventually involves everyone. We're all on this chart, and everyone here, regardless of their profile, needs to have security tasks. Even the project manager needs to understand those tasks. And everyone needs to know which their security tasks are, and all together we need to build our security. This is why this mindset is a mistake, and we need to change it. So what do we need to think of? We need to think about deep defense. Is this clear for everyone? Have you heard of this concept before? It's pretty much in vogue, but deep defense, or defense in depth, is a military concept. And here is a typical castle, and there are many security measures here. Let's think of it. Who can tell me about the security measures of the castle?
¿Han dicho? Un foso, han dicho un foso.
What else? Ladies and gentlemen, the bridge. This is related to the moat, otherwise how could they go through? The towers, yes, there are more actually. The wall, the windows, there are more. What else? The door. There is more actually. the guards. Of course, the castle is not kept by robots, but there's even more if we think about it. Also the location. Looks like the resolution is changing on the screen.
No sé qué ha pasado.
I do apologize, I don't quite know what happened there. It seems the resolution got changed. This is being broadcast through streaming, so let's see if it works. So there are many measures. We can also throw arrows for attackers not to get close. If they do, we can throw oil or tar. And this is how we design our strategy security in our organization with different security measures, which is a concept most people do not understand. We just think that by having a couple of things it will be enough, but it is not. So we need to think of this. We need to think about deep defense. How can we build our security around our organization? And which measure do we need to establish it? So here's the scheme of deep defense. And we need to have security everywhere, in data and how we protect them, in security and privacy, which is also very important and it's related, in application security, host security, internal security, perimeter security, and physical security. So we need to think that we need security everywhere. It's useless to develop a very secure software and have it in a server that has no patches whatsoever, or the other way around, that I'm an administrator with good servers that are well updated, with good hardware. If I get really bad applications that destroy the whole configuration. This is why we need security everywhere. And we need to improve and understand that security aspect. So we need security everywhere. And this is the pattern that Microsoft follows. If you read their documents, they keep talking about this concept. They will always offer security and different security mechanisms throughout the whole deep defense. And SDL applies this, the software development lifecycle, which is a process of Microsoft for developing software. And I'll actually post this presentation on the Volnex website, and probably CyberCamp will also post it, as I think they did last year too. But if you do a search for Microsoft ASDL, it will show you all the resources that I will mention a lot today. And this is a process that they follow. And Microsoft explains how they develop software, not just for development, but here we also have some systems areas, because eventually these two things are connected, obviously. And this is the cycle of how we begin with an application, with the idea of security, and we end up with the secure implementation of that software. So we have security throughout the whole cycle. Something very important, sometimes doesn't work, is where shall we start with? What is the first thing on SDL? It's quite early, isn't it? Okay, in blue. What does it say there in blue? Training. This is how they should start with. Sometimes in organization, training gives problems. They tell us we need to do things where there's no training, and then starts yet another mistake. This is why when people tell me they're secure, I mean, all my customers think they're secure until I do an audit on them. And they do not understand these basic concepts. We need to start with training, otherwise it's impossible for people to know about security if they don't have an appropriate training. So the very first step is to give training to each stakeholder, and each stakeholder profile needs to have appropriate information. So we need to start with this. We need to give training. We cannot get them to write secure code if they don't know what it's about. So training is the first step. Then we have the requirements stage, concepts, and here we have different things. Here we have design people, and with that stage they think on the idea, to develop an application, wherever it is, and we start thinking about security. But in this stage, in requirements, we haven't done anything yet, we just have an idea, and we're starting to write up a document, let's say, but we can start doing security. Well, let me tell you how Microsoft does it, for whoever wants to copy it. Microsoft has a very simple internal form that everyone needs to fill in. Whenever you want to do a software, we fill in that form. It has different parameters. It's very simple, and people don't need to be security experts. Anyone can look at that form, and depending on the information it has, it tells you the activities of SDL you need, depending on the different parameters. So with the requirements, we're thinking about what we're going to do, and we're starting to have security tasks. So we start from the very beginning. Then we have the design stage. Now we're talking and working in designing like crazy. We've seen the baby with crayons over there. We take a free weekend to think about my software that's going to break through the market. And here we also have the threat model, which is just a methodology consisting on assessing the possible threats my software may have before I launch it. And this is strongly applied to development, but I'm going to show you a tool for this, because we need to understand that this is a methodology. We need to understand these concepts, and we could do it with a Word document, not with a tool. People do it with the tool because it has several advantages, but in fact this is just a methodology. And what we assess here are the possible risks. We're designing and identifying the security problems and how we're going to mitigate them. And we haven't written up any code yet. And this also helps us to understand the different security tasks and what we need to do, which is quite important. So Microsoft, all developments need to start with a threat model. And then we need to see whether we need to do more things. But everyone needs to go through one or several threat models. There are more simple things, other more complex things. And the Windows operating system, for example, cannot have a threat model to cover the whole of Windows. We decompose or split the software in different components, and we do threat models. Windows has thousands of threat models in this case. And then we have the implementation, the development, and we'll see several tools to assess the code, .NET, C, at code level, and when we compile, how can we assess the binaries? So we're going to check different tools for dynamic and static analysis for code and binaries. So we're going to check verification tools, facing, how can we do facing from our application? And for those who don't know about this technique, facing is sending bad data to the training and see where things explode. Whenever a vulnerability is published here, facing is one of the most used techniques to search for vulnerabilities. So I'll show you Microsoft tool, because Microsoft has many tools, but they do not publish them, because regarding fuzzing is something very interesting and attractive. Many people are developing technology, and Microsoft has some good technologies in fuzzing, but they haven't yet published them. We're just going to look at the ones published by Yatis that are good but simple. But for fuzzing, there are many tools that you can download for free and use them. I'll just show you the ones that Microsoft published, which are quite good. And then we have the release stage, where we need to do implementation. The implementation of that software, and here we have different tools we can assess for a system or for tools to assess security before we implement it. And there are different tools that allow us to access and to assess the security of a server. There are different tools that do a scanning to check bad configurations, vulnerabilities, and we also have different tools that allow us to take a picture before and after, and we see how one application changes the configuration. So we have different tools that we can use. So let's begin to check different tools. The aim of this workshop is to get to know different tools so you can remember the ones you like, and at least you'll get to know the others. Let's see whether you know all of them. So let's begin with the development tools. There are more, but these are just a few of them. Do we know about them? Do they sound familiar? Does anyone know all of them? No? Then you're at the right workshop. If you all knew all of them, this could be over, but let's look at the different tools. I'm gonna demo pretty much all of them. Not all of them for different reasons, but very quickly. The first two ones are tools that integrate into Visual Studio Foundation that allow us to add SDL to our development. If we're using Visual Studio, they just give you some templates. Tools 1 and 2 enter some templates into Visual Studio to deal with security tasks. So we have different programmers, tests, and testing and project managers. From Visual Studio, everyone will gather tasks and we can visualize the security tasks. So these are just help tools to follow up SDL. So these are templates. Then we have the modeling tool, number 3, for threat modeling. This is very simplified, and usually we looked at these in a course I gave throughout many days, but this is very condensed, very summarized. We could actually be working on this for many hours. And then we have the anti-XSS. This is a library for secure development on .NET to validate data as Visual Studio. Do you use it? Does anyone use this tool? Yes? Which version? Which one? 2013, okay. 2015 is free. The community one, so you can use it and download it. But 2015 is good. 2013 is good too. So let's look at Visual Studio. It's a Microsoft development environment, and in fact it's one of the few compilators in the market that has different security measures in it. GFC for Linux has also different security measures, but most of them are not activated by default, which is a pity. So most developers, when they compile Linux code, they don't do it with those security measures. The case of Microsoft is that they added many similar measures that GFC has on Visual Studio, and throughout different versions, Microsoft, for example, has been adding security to Visual Studio since 2005. Then to .NET, and then they added them in 2008, 2013, 2012, and now 2015. And most of them are active by default. So when you compile, you're adding different security measures in your software. It's very transparent, so it's quite good. Then we have FXCOP, a .NET analysis tool for performance mainly, but also has some security measures. It's a bit outdated, but some people love it. It's rather something more historical. Then we have cat.net, a static code tool that is quite good. I actually helped design it, so that's why I say it's good. And politically wise, in our company, in large organizations, there are fights, of course, and this also happens at Microsoft. So I think that right now its development may not continue, which would be a pity, but cat.net allows us to assess .NET code looking for different vulnerabilities. For example, when we do audits, we always use it, but you can download it and use it. But this hasn't been updated for a while. I'm not sure it will in the future. Then we have SDL regex fuzzer for regular expressions, and we have a tool to assess regular expressions looking for denials of service. Some of them are badly written and we can provoke a denial of service. I've seen financial applications or different applications that accept irregular expressions, and if we put regular expressions on them we could have problems with the tool. Then we have SDL mini fuzz, which is a fuzzing file tool for command lines. So you can get an application that accepts files, and we can start sending bad files until the whole application explodes. So mini-files is quite easy to use, and we'll see some examples later. Then we have App Verifier, which is a dynamic analysis tool where we execute an application, and App Verifier tries to check for memory problems and so on. And then we have Bing Scope, which is pretty good, and this is a binary assessment tool. So once we compile an application, we can check with Bing Scope to see whether the compilation was good and different security measures. And Bing Scope is pretty good, but it's simple. In Volnex, or at Volnex, we developed something similar. Well, is similar but a lot more powerful. That's a whole different topic. So let's begin to check the different tools we have. Okay, I'm giving the cameraman a lot of hard work because I'm moving a lot. So the first tool is a very simple template. It is a tool that we download, and it uploads a template on Visual Studio. It installs the SDL requirements and gives us the different tasks on our application, different measures it must have, and so on. The policies, we can also do vulnerability searches. It's got queries for specific searches. It also enters all the SDL ways, and this is really focused on Microsoft. And we need to realize that SDL is the secure development framework of Microsoft, and technologies referred to in this guide are from Microsoft, but SDL is totally agnostic. You can apply SDL to a Linux development, for example. You just need to start with the concepts, different security tasks, and then look for the appropriate tools. But here we're talking about the Microsoft and Windows world. Then we have the final security review, which is very interesting. Some people are scared by it. And this final security review is a term used by Microsoft, applies so that everyone can use it. So this is the ultimate test. And let's say you have a development and you've done different security measures throughout SDL, and now you're ready to launch that application to the market. So internally, Microsoft does that FSR, that final security review, which is an ultimate assessment to check whether you get the go-ahead. And not many companies can say this, but Windows Vista, and that's why it came out the way it came out, but when it went to FSR, several things were detected and they stopped their marketing and it created about 1.5 or 2 months delay. Microsoft can allow this, but in other organizations this may not be possible because you're not committing with the deadlines, maybe because you didn't comply with the security measures. So why getting a software out to the market if it's not going to be secure? This is what we need to take into account. This is why FSR is very important. And when you talk about this to people, they may get scared. When you tell a company that the security people will stop the development, may not come out. Imagine it's a banking application. People could get really scared. But these are things we need to do. It's just about training and about people understanding this. Otherwise, if we work in security, we'll never run out of work. And this also has third-party component integrations and so on. I'm not going to do a demo because we should have a machine with Team Foundation Studio server, or Visual Studio Team Foundation server, and it's too messy. So Visual Studio shows this template, and here we have different tasks, and we can look at the status of our application and send different security tasks to the profiles. And we can look at the security of our development, and we can do this for any development. If we do you use Team Foundation? Yes? In that case, you can test this. Okay, so the template.
Here we can see the application, the vulnerabilities and so on, and people just upload the reports, the threats, vulnerabilities that they find, and very quickly, well, we have a control panel, and that tells us about the security of our development. Then we have number 2 tool, which is the same. Well, it's a different template, but for agile developments. So if people use the agile methodology, then it's the same in the end. When it comes down to it, they're the same tasks, but they tend to be shorter, more agile, faster ones. And there's also specific documentation by Microsoft for agile and how to use agile for this. Then we have the other template for the SDL Agile, and so here we come on to the real stuff. If we talk about the SDL tool, we have the threat model. With the threat model, we're always talking about risk analysis. Quite simply, it's about looking at the risks, and we're still in the design stage. We haven't written any code at this point, and we want to make something clear here. This is a methodology, so you have to understand the different concepts. I'm not going to go into details right now. I mean, there's quite a lot of documentation in order for you to be able to look at that. It's not a tool. I mean, it's not just a matter of doing the tool or having the tool. No, you have to understand the methodology, and then you can use the tool. Some people do it with Word, Visio. So each person uses what they want, and the tools, Microsoft has developed an SDL tool which is quite useful and does quite a lot of things, and that's why I recommend using it, but you don't have to. Microsoft had 2 methodologies for the threat model. I'm only going to talk about one because there's been a bit of an eternal battle between the 2, and this one has come out as the winner, and the other one is still available on the internet. It's called TAM. You can search for it if you want to try it. There are 2 different methodologies, but this is the one that, well, the official one, let's say, and it's what's used internally, and so that's what I'm going to talk about. So we're going to look at the design of our software and the analysis of possible threats to our application. This is basically an exercise, and here we talk about the testing, the managers, and normally this is a task that can be done very quickly in 1 or 2 days, and this tends to be, quite short in terms of duration, a couple of hours or a day or 2, and we can do that with the threat model. It's all about producing a document with possible threats and mitigation, how we can mitigate those threats, those vulnerabilities. And this is something we should always do. Here we have the link, and I mean, this presentation is going to be available to you anyway, so you'll have access to that. It gives you information about how you use it and how you can download it. This is the screen for the tool. This is the latest version, the 2014 one, which is the latest one. We'll see it in a minute. We're going to, well, we'll see a little bit more interesting. Okay, so can you see that okay? Yeah, you can see that all okay? I wasn't sure how you would be able to see the different ones, the different things here. Let me just see if I can adjust the screen. Okay, well. So what is this? This is simply, in terms of concepts, we're talking about an application which is going to have users who can connect through HTTP or other formula. They're going to have one application. This application can have different processes, and so basically we're going to construct what we call the components for our application. And here, for example, the good thing of this is that it's a methodology, so we can do this in Word or Visio, but it's a tool, and the good thing is that it gives us a lot of things kind of ready-made. Objects, we have processes, we can create threads, and it works at different levels, but the threat model is based on the idea that we work at different layers. We start off with a very general high up level, for example, a user connecting to a web application which has a database behind it. That could be the first level. Then we would move on to the second level, which it goes into greater detail. For example, the web application, which has different things. So in that case, we would have level 2, a different threat model, and we would develop the threat model in that way. And the good thing with this tool is that we can see here on the right that it's got a lot of objects that we can include, stencils with different properties, connecting with different things and how it communicates with the different objects. We've got relationships. We can have relationships of trust, trusted relationships. So if we're connecting with a payment gateway with a third party, well, we wouldn't have such a strong relationship, so we could put a barrier there. We could indicate that there is not a direct relationship with that application, and we have to think of security measures, and we can't just take it for granted that that third party will be secure. So we can set it up, and the application can generate different things for us. So we can click, and here we could do different things in this way. And with this, with the TMS, it's got the documentation. I'm not sure if I can access it. I think I have to go back to the main screen.
No. La documentación.
Well, the documentation, there's great documentation, a very big document that tells you about how you should do this. And here we're talking about a process of how to do a threat model, to do threat modeling. And here we can see we have the external elements, the components, the flow, the boundary, and so on. I'm not going to talk about the threat model because there's a lot of document about that, and Microsoft has also provided videos on how to do that. So I just want you to know about this tool and how it works. So all you need to do is 2 or 3, and after that you'll see that it's quite similar. It's always quite similar. Then, well, it also can produce reports, possible threats. We can incorporate them. So it has quite a great deal of capacity. So that's why I recommend using it. And above all, when you're doing an analysis with Microsoft, people tend to send documents and threat models, and you end up having to read them. So, and that's why it's interesting. And that's the first one I wanted to show you. Quite simple. It's just about getting to grips with how it works, and that's it. And so with that, I'll just leave it up to you to study and learn about it. Another tool would be the Band H. There's nothing mysterious here. This is a library in C with all of the functions that Microsoft forbids. So a code cannot have any of these functions. You can download this, and it's the Visual Studio. The latest versions change them. So if it identifies an insecure function, it replaces it with a secure function. So it depends on the Visual Studio version that you have. That's the most recent ones do that. But this is basically what it is. This is in C. We've got 100 functions in C which cannot be written, so these functions cannot be used. And also it gives you the recommended ones. I'm not going to do a demonstration of this because it's just basically this library. You can download this and you have a whole list of all of the functions that cannot be described in the code, and there are quite a lot of shared or common functions. So and it tells you the ones which cannot be in the code. If we talk about XSS, this is for validation of data. It's a library to prevent vulnerabilities. It's also known as Microsoft Web Protection Library. It's got two components. We've got the development library, which is just a small library in .NET. We incorporate that in our software. It's got different methods and it validates the data. It's quite simple. Then we've got another component, which is the security runtime engine, which is something, I'm not going to say a firmware because it's not, but what this does though, it is integrated on the Microsoft Web and for attacks and the injection of SQL at server level. So there could exist a vulnerability, but it tries to resolve that from the web server, and it works for ISS. In the case of this library, it's pretty good, and now it's included by default in .NET 4.0, so it's included by default. If you're developing in .NET in older versions, you can download the library and incorporate it into your development. Here we have the different methods that are offered. We have HTML, XML, URL, and JavaScript. The JavaScript code, and the library tries to detect malicious code and to code it in a secure way so that the application will not suffer an attack or any vulnerability. So it's quite simple. How do we use it? Well, we incorporate the library. Like I said, if you have .NET 4.0, there's no problem. You've already got that included. If you've got an older version, however, you'd have to download the library, import it into your code, and use the methods. We've got, for example, we've got a parameter of the URL and we validate it. That helps us to validate that attack. So it can't be any simpler than that, really. Here, if we talk about Visual Studio, this is more interesting. This is the development environment of Microsoft. It has security measures. And since VS 2012, it's got something which is called SDL, which tries to incorporate SDL when we are compiling a code. If you have Visual Studio with SDL, it gives us measures, security measures. Well, so that's something new you can incorporate if you're not using it. And what does that do? If we have this parameter, it gives us different security measures in execution and also compilation. If we talk about compilation, it looks for different vulnerabilities in the code. It does an analysis, a static analysis of the code, and it looks for these vulnerabilities that we can see here. If it detects vulnerability, then the code will not be compiled and it won't get approval. So when we're compiling, then we should always activate this parameter to see whether our code is appropriate in all these security areas, and if it is approved, it has different measures for execution, and here it incorporates security measures inside the code, and when that code is running, it detects attacks against the application. So it's compilation and execution. This is quite simple. We've got a parameter and that's it, and we've got all of this in place and working. How does it work? Well, let's see. It's gone here. Okay. So we've got different development commands. We've got this one for compiling, for SDL. So we've got different demonstrations. We're going to go to Visual Studio. Okay, we've got a small program here. We're going to compile this. Since I'm using the last version, Visual Studio 5, this has improved quite a great deal in terms of security. And it's free. You can download the community version, and that's free, and you have these security elements included in the free version. So I recommend that you get that one, the 2015 one. It's quite good. So you can compile this program. I've used the parameter, well, I've taken away all of the alerts or warnings, and in the past, well, in 2015, well, they've included that, but prior to that they didn't. But this is quite a classic idea of compiling them without any warnings, because I don't want to be bothered here by any program. And so we've got the compiled program. The compilation has been done without any errors, but if we look at it, it will have vulnerabilities and such like. This is a classic. You've got people who compile and don't want any errors. This one does it, and it's all ready. What we want here then, well, let's rub it out again. Let's delete that. So what I'm going to do is activate the SDL. So when we're compiling a code, it always has to go through SDL, and until the SDL is resolved, the product won't go out, or its development will not be continued. Here we can see, if you can see that on the screen, it's given me an error, and it's not been compiled. If we hadn't had an error, this is an error in compilation in terms of vulnerabilities in the code, and because of that, the compilation has been stopped. If there hadn't been any error in the compilation, then it would have been, we would have had a binary compilation. But since we've seen vulnerabilities or possible errors in compilation, it's stopped the compilation process, and it tells us that. It says, it talks about 4700, which there's a pointer that isn't correct, and that could represent a vulnerability which could be exploited. I'm not going to go into any details of that, but this could have consequences. It could threaten the security of the software. If we look at the 470 is here. We can see that. Here it is. We've got it there. 4,700. The speaker corrects himself. And this talks of an uninitialized local variable. And in 2013, you've still got that SDL, but the 2015 version has improved it quite a lot. It's quite simple. And as you can see, well, it's quite simple, and we can save ourselves quite a lot of headaches from the point of view of programmers and also development. Okay, if we talk about FXCOP, this is a verification for .NET. For security, it's a little bit poor. At least for me, I don't find it of much use, because I tend to look for vulnerabilities that I can exploit, and this one gives me security vulnerabilities, but they're not so much the ones that I'm interested in for me. But if it comes to resolving errors, it's useful for that. And we can see that FXCOP is a tool which has different areas, basically. It looks at the code quality in .NET, and we can use it. In the past you could download it, but now you have to download SDK of Windows 7, the whole SDK, in order to have this tool, or to get this tool. And as we can see, this tool takes the SDL and it looks at the different areas. Security, performance, and so on. And if you've got that in .NET, it's a little bit outdated, a little bit old, because it's they're trying to include FXCOP in Visual Studio. I don't think it's quite got there yet, but FXCOP, I imagine it will eventually vanish, but for the moment it's still there and we can still use it. Cat.NET, quite interesting, because this looks for vulnerabilities in binary code which we can exploit. And these are the ones that are of interest to people in security. So what it does, what cat.net takes the code, it compiles it, and here what's good, we can have binaries with, and we can take them and look for binary vulnerabilities. So we can use it to look for vulnerabilities in binaries for which we don't have the code. And we could say that cat.net analyzes the binary in .NET, and it looks for input and output of data, and it traces or tracks that information. We have rules from XSS, SQL, LDAP, XPath, redirection, process execution, file canonization, information and exceptions, and that's what we're looking for in .NET. These are quite serious, and many applications have them. Cat.NET has a version for Visual Studio, for example. We can see that it can be executed, but it's a little bit outdated. For example, 2015, it doesn't work. It has to be the 2008 or the 2010. So it's a little bit old, but you can use the command line version, which is the one I'm going to show you now. So here we're going to look at cat.net. Here we have a command line. Okay. There's the tool. Well, it says no, and I'm running it 64-bit byte. Here we have different parameters and such like. We're going to take vulnerabilities that I've got. We're going to start with this. Okay. Okay, I'm looking for it. Where have I got the asterisks? Okay, I've got that. All right. So to cat.net, I've asked it to look for this directory and all of the binaries that are there in .NET, and for it to also, well, we're just going to very quickly open up cat.net. Okay. We can see that there are no files that are called report. I execute this, and now it's looking for vulnerabilities in that binary. I've got the report file, and here we've got the vulnerabilities in these two DLLs. So here, for example, we can see that we have vulnerabilities, and if we have the code, then we can identify the code, and if not, we can tell whoever we need to tell that they may have vulnerabilities, and we can try to exploit them. And we're going to look at another interesting example. So I've downloaded some libraries. So here we can see that we can see whether they're reported, whether they're real or not. And here several files which are not DLLs. I say yes for them. And so now we have 8, and it's going to look for the vulnerabilities in these DLLs. These are different SDLs that with different ones. It's quite fun. I mean, if you download software from different places and you can analyze it, and then if you want to tell the different developers, well, that's up to you. Let's see when it finishes. It'll take a little while. It's analyzing these, and What's good with cat.net is that if we have the code, it will give us a lot more information. It will talk about the lines of code that are affected. If we just used a binary, then you wouldn't have that ability to tell you which code line. But even so, it's still not so perfect. The results have to be validated. And just like everything else, it may give us errors, but other times it's right. So if we have this .NET code, and we can look at this to find vulnerabilities, and even if we don't have the code, we can still look for vulnerabilities. But if we have the code, we work with the code, and cat.net would tell us the lines of code that are affected, so we can look at the code and we can see whether we've really got a vulnerability there which could be exploited or not. Okay, it's on the point of finishing. It's found 18, I think. What else? Let's see if it'll finish. 32 exceptions with possible error messages, 52 injections of SQL. Well, that's not bad for a couple of minutes. With something we've just downloaded from internet. Well, what I would do here is a bit more of an analysis with a bit of reverse engineering to see what could be exploited. But we've just spent a couple of minutes with this running, so we've got something to start with, and we've got vulnerabilities, and it's pretty quick. If we look to the report, here we can see it, and here we can see it tells about the different vulnerabilities. And here we've had the input and outputs which have been traced with the different methods. We've done some kind of a kind of automatic reverse engineering, and here we've got the vulnerabilities. We can find lots of details. That's not bad, is it? This tool, as you can see. Well, look, we've got a couple of minutes and we've found some vulnerabilities. Cat.net, well, I'm very fond of this because I helped in its development, and obviously, you know, everyone's got their emotional side. We worked on fuzzer techniques, and now we've been looking at code analysis, and we're starting, we've compiled the code and we can start to analyze it from the application point of view. We have an analyzer for regular expressions to identify DOS, and as I said, this is above all for denials of service. So here we have the fuzzing, which we'll see now. We can go here. Okay, let's see. Got that. I always forget. I should write things down. Okay. How does it work? Will we include a regular expression? Okay. This one, is it good? Is it right or wrong? I mean, it's a bit more complicated. So, well, it's this simple. We include the regular expression here, and we have different methods. Normally we want the default method. It's normally good. And how many iterations we want it to do? We can say 100 here to make it simple. Normally we'd be talking about quite high numbers. We might say a couple of million, and then we would just leave it hours and hours, and it would carry out different tests. And you have to bear in mind that this would be used in .NET, and it's not always the same as for other languages such as Python or Java. So depending on the regular expressions, well, they might work here or not. You put the information in and we execute it. We start it, we can see that it's finished, and logically we can't see here. I'm going to change the resolution to see if we can see. at the bottom where we can't see it very clearly, it says step 6. Well, it will be in red or in green. So step 6. Let me just try and change the screen configuration. Let's see. Don't think I did much. Let's try up here.
No, joder. Bueno, pues ahora está ahí con la...
So it's kind of going mad with all these resolutions. But here, in green, that's the one that is not so well. Okay, so where is it? Let's put another expression in. Okay, we can't really see it here. Oh goodness. I hope I'm not gonna damage the streaming. This is a bit smaller, but I hope you can see it. Okay.
No, pues no se ve. Pues bueno, la resolución...
So you can't see it. The resolution is here then. In the presentation you have the expressions too. Even though we can't see it here, it's going mad with these resolutions. But down here it's in red, and this is showing an error. It's quite similar. So this is very easy. Below in green it's okay, in red it's bad. So you can copy the regular expressions, have it here, have the time you want and the interactions you want, and the more the better. Let's go to a more normal resolution.
Creo que teníamos esta a lo mejor. A ver.
This was the one. Okay, as you can see here, all these tools are easy to use. We don't need to be experts in security to use them. That is the aim of Microsoft. And here's an example. Here we had a regular expression. In red we can see an error being detected. So here we may need to do a modification in the regular expression, or take into account that this can cause an error in the program. And we need to think about this if our application accepts regular expressions and that the user can introduce them. And here we aim to get a denial of service that affects the integrity of our application. So here's the mini fuzz, and this is a fuzzing tool for applications. Very easy to use, very simple, as we'll see next. And this is the tool. Let's have a look at it. Let's close this here. And here's the minifaz. So how does minifaz work? Well, first of all we need to get an application that we want to exploit. Here's one. Okay, let's just do it here.
Ya lo he compilado, está compilado, vale.
Now compiled. And now I've stated I want an application that is vulnerable. Since I don't know the parameters, if we have parameters we could define them, but since the application doesn't have parameters, I've written the %1, which you will get all the files in templates. Can you see the file? templates. This means that he will have all the malicious files, so to say, and the tool will get those files, will modify them and transfer them to the tool to see whether it does explode. So we need files there. What am I going to do? I'm going to get all the tools we're seeing now.
Lo voy a copiar. Esto está.
I'm going to copy it. Users. Minifast. Or is it here? Where is the root? Well, the root's here on the template. On the desktop. So here you need to leave the files that you want Minifast to manipulate. So it's compiled them, and we need to take into account that we can set Minifast to detect different errors in the application by default. We can ask it to be real aggressive, and this is where we will get the templates from, and this is where Minifast will store the information. We execute it. We press yes. Since my files are long and big, it will take a bit more time, but there's no problem. The application is being executed. Minifast is executing my application, and it's having trouble. It seems silly, but it happens all the time. And here we see that the application is having trouble everywhere. And here we can go and see the results. So in the directory, if we go back, we can see the class directory, and we can see the files that have trouble. Here's a copy of the modified file, and then I can do a diff and look exactly where the trouble was. And then I can even go to logs and have some sort of short report on XML with the results of the execution, the trouble that occurred, files that had trouble, and this is a test that we could do from a testing point of view. And Microsoft has the so-called magic tables, and according to application, there may be certain fuzzing iterations. There may be millions, and we may need to add this to our application. It's very simple, and you can actually download applications. In the case of Minifast, applications need to accept command lines, but there are many fuzzes that you could download of all sorts. And it couldn't be more simple than this. Okay, then we have the app verifier. We still have some time to explain it. This is a very simple application.
Lo que hace App Verifier es una herramienta de análisis dinámico. Lo que
So App Verifier does dynamic analysis, and he tries to find different problems in memory, see how the application manages memory, check whether there are memory leaks, and so on. This would be like a debugger. So how does it work? Where is it now? Here it is. So here we add an application. I go to the demos I have, and let's do the same one we just had trouble with, because it's getting trouble everywhere.
le voy a decir que haga todos los tests.
I'm going to try to get it to do all tests. The tool will look for different things. I'm going to try to save it. I left it here. Here we have the tool running. We execute it. We've done it. It's hard trouble, didn't go through the appropriate parameters. And if we can check the results here in view, logs, we can check the tool is just being executed. We go to view, and here is a short report on the tool. And here you check for different things, but this is very useful with C++ tools, because regarding the memory.net, we don't need to worry about that. We don't manage memory, but in C++ applications there may be many memory problems, and this tool helps us find specific memory problems and so on. And this is very simple, so we configure the app verifier with the application, and we execute it, we do whatever we need to do, and we can actually check the memory applications. It couldn't be any easier. So this was the app verifier that we can combine with the fuzzer, and here I'm doing it individually, but then we can actually combine different tools, which is a whole different topic. What about BinScope? This is a binary verification tool. It gets binaries and checks the different security parameters. Formerly this used to be a graphic interface, but in the new version of 2014, the latest one, they just did it for command lines, so that people can do their own scripts and for different reasons. But if you want a graphic interface, you can go to the former version, even though things are different here. And it's very simple.
Creo que están se encuentra. Uepa. ¿Dónde la metió?
Here it is. BinScope.
Bueno, y esto es BinScope.
So this is BinScope. And these are the different vulnerabilities searched. A BinScope can tell you whether the binary is compiled with the current Visual Studio version. It tells you whether the cookies are active, and we have different security measures of Visual Studio. BinScope is very good, but if you start assessing, in the case of Microsoft, you may see that this is complied with, because Microsoft, to publish software, they need to go through BinScope. And if you start using it with third-party software, you may see that some things may not be added, so you may look for vulnerabilities. But well, BinScope is easy. And here we have a small list, not to forget things. So let's work on this.
Vamos a meterle, yo que sé. Vamos a pasarle una de las... No, creo que no tiene ninguna de las suyas. Aquí podéis coger lo que queráis, yo que sé. Vamos a hacer una de las demos, supongo. No lo he compilado. Vamos a compilarlo rápidamente.
Very quickly.
Vamos a coger la minifaz y ya está. En el caso de minifaz, ahora tenéis que decirle la ruta del... ¿Se ve o no?
So with minifaz we need to show the route. Can you see it here?
¿Se ve el fondo o no? Más o menos. Bueno, ejecutamos BinScope, parametro file y la...
So we execute BinScope and we can only do it file by file. So for people to do their own scripts, you need to work a bit harder. It's a bit too early in the morning. Okay, what did I forget here? Okay, this may be the target.
Porque es not file as target.
This is not file, it's target.
Joder. Bueno, en este caso no ha salido nada, pues le he pasado una aplicación tal, tan sencillo como esto, le pasamos, joder, la resolución se vuelve aquí loca, pero bueno. Bueno, no quiero pensar cómo se ve el streaming, pero bueno. Fácil, aquí como veis hemos pasado el parámetro target.
You see, we went from target parameter, the files we want to assess. In this case, we don't have anything in particular. We can add DDLs and see the checks here. So it checks the compiler version. It only looks at Visual Studio, but if you work a modern version of Visual Studio, we will be good. If we use an old version, it will be an error. And here you can check different measures, and whenever we compile, these are some checks and tests for .NET, but it's rather focused on the native code, such as C++. But for .NET, it has several things. .NET for .NET and C, it's recommended to run the bin scope, which is very simple, as you may see here. And we've seen a few development tools now. Let's deal with the IT tools or systems tools next. Do we all know them? I guess we do, don't we? Do they all sound familiar, more or less? Yes, they sound a bit better now. Regarding development, people don't know them so much, but in IT, people know them a lot better. So we have the Security Essentials, Windows Defender, which is an antivirus tool. It's free, it's quite good. We have the MBSA, a Windows equipment scanning tool. We have the Microsoft Security Compliance Manager, a tool to generate policies and apply them. We have the WACA, which is another tool to check the configuration of an equipment securely. I also helped designing it. The interface is not very good, but I couldn't decide on that. Then we have the Attack Surface Analyzer, very interesting because it allows us to check the status before and after. So the Attack Surface aim is to run it at the beginning. We can execute it after installing everything. Well, let's say you install the OS, or at least the patches, and we can execute Attack Surface. We'll take a picture and then we can do whatever we need to do for configurations and other things. We can execute Attack Surface again and do a comparison of the before and after that tries to search for possible attack entry points with configurations and so on. Then we have Query. People in Microsoft do like it. It's not very special, it's just like a small port scanner, but people in Microsoft do like it. I haven't used it much, but then we have EMAT, which is a security tool that has yet another additional level of security for applications. And this is very interesting. Regarding the Security Essentials, Windows Defender, does anyone use it here? Do you? Do you use it? Some of you do? Well, this is the Microsoft antivirus. It's very good. This is the one I use. I don't have any other antivirus manufacturer. I'm not interested in it. And Microsoft made a bit of a mess with the names because these are different departments, and the same situation happens here again. So we have Security Essentials or Windows Defender. Depending on the Windows version, we need one or the other. If we are in Windows 8 and above, it's only Windows Defender by default. It's embedded in Windows 10. So we just forget about it. In the case of Windows 7, Vista or XP, if you're still not very sensible and keep using this OS, you have Windows Defender, but it only detects, it doesn't eliminate. So you need to install the Security Essentials. If you are in Windows 7, you need to install Security Essentials to have the ability to eliminate viruses. Otherwise, it will only detect them and you're still infected. In the case of Windows 8 or higher, you have Windows Defender, even the Security Essentials doesn't exist anymore, and it's just Windows Defender. So it's a bit of a mess, because in Windows 7, Vista and XP you have Defender, but you also need to install the Security Essentials. It's not difficult, it's just a bit messy. And here you can see the differences: Security Essentials, Security Defender. And this is a malware antivirus that you may install. This is totally free. And for personal usage there's no problem, but for SMEs it's up to 10 equipment. 10 pieces of equipment, and an SME could use it for free, but afterwards you may need to request a corporate license. And for small companies or SMEs you can use it, and the antivirus engine is surprisingly good. And some antivirus companies are not very happy about it. It could be skipped, but it's very good. And it's free, so please use it. And it's very simple. And here's a Security Defender. Let's do a demo on this. I had it deactivated because I was doing some tests that would bother me, but I'll just activate it back. You could have it activated, but the protection seems to be okay. And as you may see, it's very simple to use. Okay, let's do a demo here. What do I need to do?
Aquí tenemos un...
Here we have some malware, Dark Comet. I don't know whether you know it, but it's a rat, very well known. The Syrian government used it to prosecute dissidents, and with the Jesuit Charlie, after the bombings, some people used it to infect other people. So this rat has a lot of history, and if I extract it from here, if everything goes well, see, the antivirus is prompting me. It will delete the file because this is Windows 7 and I have Security Essentials. Otherwise it wouldn't have deleted it, but it has deleted it. I haven't done anything, and here's my protection. The antivirus engine is very good, but this is up to you. Since we have so many antiviruses in the market, use whatever you want. It works pretty well, and I didn't need to do much. I got sent a zip by Tomas, and here we just stopped this. We had a malicious zip. I didn't do much, but it just detected it. And the license allows you to use it on SMEs or at SMEs. I can remember the number of workstations, but you can use it for small and medium companies, and it's free, very easy. The next one is the MBSA. It's a small vulnerability scanner that checks the Windows configuration, so you see whether some patches are missing. And does any of you use it? Some administrator, you do? Okay. If you're Windows administrators, I don't know what you use, but I'd rather not ask. And this way you can use right now to download this. It's pretty simple, it's not wonderful, but it allows us to scan a machine or whole domains. It checks for patches that are missing. It also checks wrong configurations for Windows, the web server, SQL Server, and here may help us have better configured servers. It's as simple as this. We download the MBSA, and we can scan a machine or different machines. Here is a scanning image, and here I'm telling it to search for administrator accounts, weak passwords. It does a bit of an attack, checking weak configurations. It checks the SQL and web server configurations, and it also tells me whether the security update is activated. Otherwise, we can get it to configure the machines. Okay, so here it is. Easy. You scan a computer, this machine, you're gonna say yes. And we'll try to connect the internet, because it usually connects the internet. This is a bit funny with this tool. It always tries to connect to the Microsoft services to download some files and have the latest update on patches, configurations and so on. So we need to wait for a timeout until the computer is scanned. Since I'm not very patient with this, let's cancel this. I think there is an already made report, and I hope so. And those I reported it yesterday, testing the demos, and this is it. Because it does take a couple of minutes to connect to the internet, but there was no difference from yesterday to today anyway. So this generated the report, and here we have different things that may be wrong. Some patches may be missing because I didn't install any. And the update patch is not activated, or the accounts, and very quickly, in yellow it's doubtful, in green it's okay, in blue he couldn't do it, or there's something doubtful, and we have red, exclamation mark. It's also a warning, but that service is not running on the machine. And here we have the report. This is a machine, and here we could have a domain with all the machines. And this is a next ML report that might allow us to write different scripts, to go to Excel and do our searches. So it couldn't be more simple, really. Very easy, as you may see. What about compliance? Well, the compliance is a more complex tool that unloads configuration policies and what Microsoft recommends. And this covers everything from XP to Server 2012, the latest version. And for Windows 10 you have pretty much all Microsoft products. And what compliance does is to unload the policies and the guidelines. We can modify them, and then we can apply them to a machine or to a domain very quickly. So according to Microsoft, these are the best configuration practices of the operational systems and the applications according to them. As we may see here, the compliance needs to be here, or should be here.
Bueno, el compliance es bastante fácil.
Compliance is very easy. When you install it, you see everything here. You can connect to the internet. I don't have a connection myself, but in this case it's a Windows 7. And here you can see Windows 7. Okay, so in this case this is Windows 7, and we have the different policies that I could implement. And here there could be a bit of everything. If your Windows environment administrators, is very good, because you may have templates that you may modify or apply them directly. And this is what Microsoft recommends, to configure these securely. So here we could say, okay, I want to open this policy, I want to download it, and here I have the whole configuration of what Microsoft recommends to securely configure the machine. So I could do modifications in my company has a security policy, I can actually adapt it to my organization. And I can do different changes here. And this takes a bit of time, but you can play with wherever you want, and we can save it to a CAP file, for example. And here I save this on the desktop. Okay. Here it is, here's the policy. And there's a tool given by Microsoft within the security compliance, which is the local GPO, which is a tool that needs to be installed, and this is just a small command line that implements our policy, and the Windows policy applies, and this is it. The fun part is configuring the whole policy or using Microsoft standard policy, but once we have a policy we can save it and implement it in all the computers we want. We can implement it in the whole domain, in machine, wherever we want. And this is in a very simplified way. The security compliance has a lot more details, but I just want to quickly simplify this. But we get a Microsoft template, we modify it if we want, and we apply it on the computers by applying a Windows configuration policy. If you're administrators, you work on this with a daily basis.
Then we have Waka, which is got quite a, well, not quite a funny name, which is the Web Application Configuration Analyzer, and this is something that looks for different things. And what it does, well, what Waka does is it looks for Windows configuration, IIS, SQL, according to the best practices. And so in the case of Waka, we can see information. We've got a wrapper down there, it sounds like, in the background. Okay, we're going to scan a machine. Has everybody seen this? So when I open up in Waka, I can see, well, the good thing with Waka is that it allows me to make comparisons. So I can do different scans on the same machine, and it makes comparisons, which is quite good to see whether things have been improved or not. And here we have the different rules. There's a whole lot of rules. This is XML file, and we can incorporate that to the engine. And here, as we can see, this is what Waka's looking for in the different areas. Here we do the scan with a Waka. We say, okay, yes, scan. It's in progress. It's quite quick, and we're also where we can scan the domain. When we close it, we can look at the results. Here we have all of the reports. This is the last one, and as you can see, we've got the whole report that it's produced. It's got it in with color coding, what's good, what's bad, and we can see quite a lot of things here in red which need improving, well, or not. I mean, it depends on what everybody's looking for. You don't have to improve it 100%, but each organization has to adapt it the way they see fit. But that's what's being suggested. And as you can see, we could work on many things here. And in Microsoft, where they configure a server, some of the tools, well, they use Waka to look at the whole configuration. And we've seen here the report. We have the report from yesterday. And we can compare scan results. And as you can see, here we have a comparison. They're the same because there have been no changes, but normally we could very quickly see whether things have improved or worsened, and we would hope that that wasn't the case, but sometimes it happens. And so we can search using that, and the tool can be exported. Well, this can be exported to different formats and such like. And that's what Waka is. Attack surface analyzer, what we're looking for with attack surface analyzer is we're looking at the points on the server which are not well configured. So attack surface looks at lots of things, ports, registers, services, files, lots of different parameters. So it's like taking a photo of before and after and comparing the two. And what I've done, well, I configured, I've installed this without any patches or anything practically, and I took a photo using Attack Surface Analyzer beforehand, and then I started to install things. I installed services and made modifications in the system. So, what's Attack Surface all about?
Por aquí. Bueno, entonces aquí le decimos aquí es...
Here we ask it to run a new scan. And we can see it's starting to scan. It's looking at the assembles, services, files, registry, the things that have changed. It's taking a photo now, and then it will compare it with what existed before. As you can see, it's scanning, and it won't take long. Complete. Here we've got the time when and then it finished, the estimated finish time. And this attack surface is for the local. It's a local mode in the equipment. I mean, if you're talking about a server, if people talk about installing this in the server, you know, people start to get a little bit, well, they might find that rather strange. But here we have the application, and then we can see what modifications need to be made in the system, whether we're interested in doing that or not. And here we've got things that it's searching for. And we're finished. If we go back to the top, it's almost finished. It's on the point of finishing. So the attack surface concept is about looking for the points where we could attack, and here we're looking on the server, but it would be the same for an application. If we talk about threats, what we're doing is looking for the attack surface, and that's what we're finding here, and we're doing it from a server point of view in this case. Let's see if it finishes. It seems to be coming to... yeah, I think it's all... that's it. It's finished. It didn't take that long. So then we ask for it to generate a report, because we've got the before and after. If I don't have that, well, for example, if I had a scan from yesterday, I could compare it from yesterday with the one that I took yesterday. And here we have the different routes. The baseline would be the first photo, let's say, the basic system. Then we made modifications, install the software, do everything we want, and after that we would look at the product cab, which is the one afterwards, and we can also include the report file name and generate it, and now it's comparing the two results, the before and after. Let's see if they finish. Takes a little bit. It takes a little bit longer here in the demo. When I prepared the demo, I was using a bit more of a powerful machine, and it was quite a lot quicker. But here, it's taking a little bit longer. That's it. So here we have a report with the before and after, this comparison. And here we can see the things, summary, possible vulnerabilities, changes and such like, and we would have to look at this and evaluate whether we have a security impact or not. But we're talking about registry, files, services, almost everything we can think of related to the Windows environment. And as you can see, there's quite a lot of information here. If we look at the attack surface, and we can see everything that's been modified, what's been opened up when it comes to installing applications. And as you can see, here we've got quite a lot that could keep us going for quite a while. And so that would be the attack surface. And we always have to bear in mind that, first of all, we take this initial photo, then we install what we want, we do the modifications we want, and then we take the photo once again. That's the procedure to follow. Then we have a port query, this port query tool. Some people love this, I don't know why, but it's like a small tool for scanning ports, monitoring ports at a local level, and people use it to look at services and such like. We've got the command version, and well, here we have it. I use a graphic version because I'm, lazy. And so here we've got the different services on the web service, for example, query, and here we go. So we have a kind of quick scan of the ports and such like. There are so many tools that it's just a matter of, personal preference. Here it talks about open port and such like. Here we can see the results. But in Microsoft, the people in the command line like to do their own scripts and that kind of thing. The good thing is that you don't have to install this. This tool is just a zip file. You can, you decompress it and just execute it directly. So it's got certain things that people like about it. And so port query, there's no mystery to that. And the last one we're going to look at is EMET, Enhanced Mitigation Experience Toolkit, and this is a tool that helps to prevent vulnerabilities. This is interesting because it provides a safety or a security level for software that might have security faults. So many exploits can stop it. The system continues to be vulnerable, but EMET tries to stop the attack. This is a very secure application, but we have to install EMET in our equipment, and people sometimes don't want to do that, but it's quite a good application. So you have that security level, added security level on the top. This is like we talked about, this defense in depth. So it's increasing the number of layers to protect against an attack. So we have different versions. We have version 5.2, I think, if I'm not mistaken. They've already got the 5.5 beta. Here we have the different processes, and we can tell it what processes we want EMET to protect. So it does processes underneath. It won't modify the application. It would modify in the more memory, not in the files, in order to be able to stop attacks. Okay, so we're going to take a look at this. Okay, sorry, it's not installed. I'll have to do this. Now I'm installing EMET. I hadn't installed it. Has anybody used this? Which version? 5.2. Okay. Nobody else? You don't use that on your Windows equipment? Well, you're missing out on quite an interesting tool that can help you out, you know, quite frequently. Okay, so I installed Emmet, or Emmet, and you can see it running at the bottom here, and let's see. I've got a version of Firefox which has a vulnerability, I don't know why. And what we're going to do is to execute Firefox. First of all, normally I execute it. It says no connection. Well, we'll open Emmet. And now we look for the process. Normally we would have to look at the applications that we want to protect. Here we have Firefox. Configure. Here we have the different security measures that are included, and we can see we've got DEP and all of these different kinds of vulnerabilities. We're not going to do anything in particular here, just click on the OK. Let's see, it's not applied it. Because we have to tell it. Let's see. Enable. Not all of them. Let's take away this one. 5 minutes, okay. Alright, we'll speed up a little bit. Well, 5 minutes. This might take a little bit longer, but, well, what time is it? Let's see. Let's see what we've done. It won't let me up the top here. No, I can't get to the resolution. Well, Emmet, when we configure here, it doesn't let me get to the top because there's a problem with the resolution. It's driving me mad. But in green, it will tell us it's protected. So if we want to exploit it, then it would stop it. But it's not going to let me. It's not going to let me. Because there's one running, maybe? Let's stop. Let's see. We can see we had to close Firefox and open up again, and now it's in green, and what it is doing is it's protecting this process. So in a transparent way, it's protecting different measures. The application is vulnerable, but it's got those protective measures in place. Now we're going to close. We're going to execute an exploit for Firefox. And if everything goes well, let's see. Let's see one of these. Can't remember which one it was. Okay, we've got Windows Defender here. Things have popped up. I think this is the one. Let's see what's happened. It's protected. And I think it should be the first. I don't know what I've done. I've done some small modification. I don't know what's happened here, but what should have happened is that we should have seen an Emmet window telling us that it's protected that exploit, but I don't know what I've done right now. Well, I should have prepared a video. So one that didn't quite work the way we would have liked, but you can see the tests, the demos on at home, and you'll be able to see that. But what we would have seen would have been a little window telling us that Emmet had identified an exploit in that page. So this version of Firefox has that vulnerability, but the good thing here is that Emmet can stop it, and we can do that with a lot of applications. The thing is with IMET, you have to do lots of tests because IMET, well, it can interfere in some applications, so we have to do tests, but IMET is a tool that I would recommend that you should install it and have it on our equipment. And it can stop quite a few attacks. The thing is that we have to install it for that software. That's very good. If we have software if we don't control it, if we don't have the code, if it's for a third-party one, we can apply EMET on that software so it stops exploits. So it's an anti-exploit measure, let's say. And here we have the other, a summary of the tools. So we've got the security tools for development. There are more, but we've seen quite a few today already. So there are no excuses. All of the ones that we've talked about, they're 100% free. You can download them and use them. So you've got no excuse not to do so. And another important thing that we've seen before is training, but technology isn't enough on its own. It's not enough. Well, for example, here we've seen lots of tools, but that's not enough. These tools, many of you will know that if you have learned how to use them, you have to understand the process. Technology is not enough on its own. People just think that if we add technology, we're going to solve the problems related to technology. No, we're just going to add more and more things. We have to understand that for security, we have to use technology, people who have to be trained and qualified, and processes to have everything clear with documentation. Training, we've talked a little bit about training. There's free training provided, thank goodness. There's free training available today. Microsoft has the SDL process training with almost everything we've seen today. There are loads of videos talking about this, and you have a whole load of documentation. And you also have Safe Code, which is an organization with different companies who want to promote the secure development. And they've included for training and videos for free. That includes Microsoft, but also many software manufacturers. They participate in software producers, and they participate and provide training for free, both in system and processes. And that's all for today, so thank you very much for coming this early this morning. It's a pleasure to be back here again this year, and we'll be back again this afternoon to talk more about these security measures. I don't know if we have any chance for questions. I'll be here anyway in the event all day long, so I don't know if you have time for questions. Yes? No? There's time for a couple of questions. A couple of questions, anybody? I'm sorry, we can't hear the question because they're not using a microphone. The question is, with the tools we've seen today for development and system, if we could carry out an audit, and would this be basic, intermediate level? And the answer would be yes, because many of these tools are used. The internal security teams use them, so they can be used for audits. And then when it comes to vulnerabilities, there are things that you could use. For example, it depends on the tool. If we talk about cat.net, could look for certain things. You could have an intermediary level with that. When it comes down to it, the tools, not just the ones we've seen today, but all of the other tools available as well, in general, they are at a basic to intermediary level. Basic to intermediate level. Right now, there are quite good tools, but often you do need a person to do an in-depth audit with more complex things. Right now, the tools don't cover all elements of security, design, logic. For those kind of things, you need to have a person. So until we have better artificial intelligence, that's why we get paid to do those jobs. Sometimes you can just run a tool and that's it, and you charge for it and that's it. But often there are other things that you have to do yourself, and there aren't tools provided, and that's where you can really earn your salary, let's say. Any other questions? No? Sorry, yes, one over there. I'm sorry, I can't hear you very well.
Oído parte, no sé qué. A ver.
Let's see. You say, no, you're talking about a security audit. Imagine I have a PC or a server I can't touch. So how can you carry out the analysis of all of these tools for Microsoft without installing them in the PC you want to audit? Well, the question, have you understood? You've heard it. Okay, I don't need to repeat it then. It depends on the tool. Some of these tools have to be installed, yes. There's no choice. And depending on the kind of tool in question, sometimes you have to install them, you've got no choice because they are local tools. So you have to install them. And there are other tools that you can do in a remote way. For example, Waka, that's a remote one. You have to have the IP or the domain or the name of the machine, certain credentials from administration, and then that's it. But depending on the tool, you may have to install it. Depends what you want to do. But also, that's why we have test equipment. You should have test equipment the same as the production equipment in order to carry out that kind of activity. Well, if you don't want to touch the production system at all, then you have to replicate it as much or as well as you can. But coming back to the same thing, you have to be a bit more flexible because this is something you have to explain. If you don't do an audit, don't worry, they're doing it for you. In internet, they're doing it, and it's called reverse audit, but they're not going to give you a report. So, you know, they're doing that. There are a load of people doing audits on internet. So we have to be, we have to be a little bit more flexible in that sense, because otherwise you're not going to have a security level that you need, really. But it depends on the tool. Any other questions? No? 1, 2, 3. No? Well, then in that case, we've finished. Thank you to everybody. It's been a pleasure.